This is the Mind Body Detox Podcast, where we discuss all things integrative health and wellness, interviewing folks from all over the world, sharing insights and wisdom on how to live a healthier life in mind, body, and spirit. Welcome back to the Mind Body Detox Podcast. I'm your host, Integrative Intuitive Medium, Kara Lovehart, and I'm here with my lovely partner, Matt Suter. And today we are going unscripted, unplanned, because we're talking about letting go. So what better of a way to record a podcast than letting go of all structures? And this episode has actually been requested by many of you out there, so here it is. It's for you right now. So, Maddie, I want to know, in your own opinion, when you see individuals working with having a hard time letting go, this is something I think that you, as a really awakened, mindful soul, see people struggle with. And I know, watching you as a very sensitive and compassionate man, I see you wanting so much to help and support people. What type of symptoms or things do you see people struggle with when they are just really having a hard time letting go? Because they may not even know that that's what's the problem. Mm-hmm. But yeah, tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, it's tough to sort of summarize, but it normally starts with a lack of control. People don't feel like they are in control of some aspect of their life. And so we tend to project that control somewhere else. And so letting go of the illusion that you can control things, that's usually the most common form that the opportunity to let something go and drastically impact your life shows up. Beyond that, you can get into the minutia of you can let go of the guy who just cut you off in traffic because staying mad and cursing at him isn't going to do anything. It'll help you blow off steam maybe, but it's not really going to accomplish anything. It's only going to bring that agitation further into your day and therefore can affect the rest of how things interact or how you interact with other people throughout the rest of the day.
Yeah, and a lot of times we hold on to those little tiny things, and I think it's those little things that add up. Mm-hmm. And so for those of you who have not listened to any of the previous podcast episodes with Matt, with my guest on here, Matt, you are a mindfulness coach. You offer meditation. You are a world mythology and religion student and educator. You love talking about those things.
I do.
So we talk about just the nature of the human experience. And the human experience includes suffering. And so much of what you talk about in mindfulness and presence is suffering is we're not now, we're not present. Right. So what are the things that you commonly see beyond, hey, that person cut me off in traffic, that are bringing us out of the now? And how does that relate to not letting go?
Well, very often it's the story that the mind tells us. So it's not so much what's actually going on in front of us, but rather the way that we interpret what's going on in front of us. So the more that we can be aware that no matter what goes on, there's always another way to look at it, that can really free us from being limited in our experiences by our judgment. So that's another universal sort of theme that applies to so many different situations in everyday life. And even more so in these things that seem to be these pivotal moments in our life. The beautiful thing is that when we can understand that we put pressure on our awareness, and a lot of times when we do that, that pressure forces it in a particular direction, and that's not being here in this moment. It's tough to kind of talk about this in this philosophical sense because you'd really have to get into details in order to really understand and grasp the concept.
Well, I'm going to give you some examples.
Yeah.
Let's talk about examples. So in my experience, when I see people who are experiencing symptoms of not letting go, okay? So most of us, when you think about letting go, you think about maybe someone who's passed away, someone that maybe is a former partner or spouse that you've lost. Maybe your child has moved out of the home, they're going off to school. Maybe you've lost a job or you changed jobs. Again, these are periods of pivotal moments in our lives where there's change. So where there's change, there's the need to let go in a bigger way. So I feel like we we usually associate, oh, well, I need to let go of that. I should have let go of that with these big things. And I liked how we started off here talking about some of these smaller things, like letting go of what that person said to you, like 5 minutes ago or 8 years ago, whatever that is. And the common symptoms I see for people who are having a hard time letting go and being present are numerous. Like, it could be a catch-all for everything, because when you're not present, and that chronic buildup of all the things, the little big things and little things you've not let go of, that builds up in the energy field, it builds up in the psyche, and it builds up in the body. So what I see people do or experience are overthinking, having a hard time being in their body. Because the body's storing something, it's storing stress. Their nervous systems are cranked up from overstimulation. Just from maybe a physical standpoint of maybe go, or our culture's teaching them to be very hyper aroused, because we have all these stimulating things happening all around us. But that could be just one thing, the overthinking, and trying to think their way out of whatever it is they're trying to let go of. I'm trying to do affirmations and all the things to let go of this thing.
Yeah, all of those things that we do with our mind ultimately take us out of the now, because our mind can never, there's always latency. There's always a delay. And so the way that I like to analogize that sort of thing is the way that Eckhart Tolle puts it, of being like the cat watching the mouse hole, that the cat isn't really focusing on the mouse, but rather the window through which this opportunity is going to arise. And rather than trying to reach into the mouse hole and pull the opportunity out, you're patient and present until that moment arrives. So when we can do that, rather than thinking about, I wonder how close he is to the edge, and I wonder if I reached in there, if I would be able to grab him, if he would run away, if there would be some other thing in there that would hurt me. We go into all of these stories inside of our head, and ultimately we expend all of this energy trying to get ahead of these possibilities, when if we were just present, we would have only used at most a quarter of that energy interacting with the present moment. And that ties back into this concept of suffering. There's a Buddhist adage that says, in life, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. And the whole pillar that's behind that is saying that suffering is pain that's being drugged out of the moment in which it happened, and therefore it is unnecessary. It's something that is perpetuated in the story of our mind, that I went through this terrible divorce, or I grew up when I was abused, or I have this situation that happened to me and that situation that happened to me. Another quote by Carl Jung is, I'm not what happened to me, I'm what I choose to become. There's such power in understanding that just because you've been through something, it doesn't mean that it defines you. It's simply an experience that you've had.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that it can't hit you at a point in which it really changes the trajectory of your life or how you're growing. But at the same time, when we can accept where we are, that's the best way to effectively get where we're going, where we want to be. Because if we're only operating off of some previous vision, inevitably as we move forward, we're going to find ourselves in a place where at one point we want it to be, but we've learned along the way that that might not necessarily be our ultimate goal. So it's important to stay here and continually release what has happened, however large or small, and to move forward.
So what you're saying is, I'm getting all this information about, right now, I'm getting this kind of visual about the stories that we tell. Almost imagine that as either a cassette tape, a videotape, a DVD, a file, depending on what age group you're listening to this. And tell me you don't know what a cassette tape is, right? But it's like your brain is operating on one of those functions, one of those stories, one of those systems. And not just the brain is operating that way. This is important to note. It's not just the brain has these thoughts and these stories, or this is what my reality, but it also is operating and driving the body. So if a story is potentially saying that I'm not safe, this person's going to hurt me or harm me, or they don't ever like me, whenever I go into a new group, people hate me, or whatever the story is, the body's going to react to that. So I wanted to, again, for those of you who are not aware that you may be holding on to things, I want to go through more symptoms that I didn't get to mention here, symptoms that are really common that people don't associate it with not letting go. Mm-hmm. Stomach issues, sleep issues are really, really big. Depression, anxiety. I mean, this is always a complex thing because there is food, there's diet, there's complex triggers or trauma or things that are also going on in your life or currently still going on that contribute to some of these physical things that are happening or mental health issues. But please keep in mind that letting go is the pause button on this tape. It's the pause button that you pause the tape, pause the cassette tape, the DVD, the file, whatever, take it out of your brain. And then you're there in a, like in the Matrix when they, with Neo, they kind of push, when he's in the alternate reality and he's getting to know his body and Morpheus is there and it's this white room mm-hmm. in the background and there's nothing there. Mm-hmm. It's the uploading program. Here I am in this still space, this space that there's nothing else going on. And that's what the present moment is. That's the space to let go. And so for years, for me, having a hard time letting go and meeting plenty of my clients and other people that I attracted who had a hard time letting go, mm-hmm. we want, and you may relate to this out there, that person who has a hard time letting go, I'm talking to my old former self, mm-hmm. we want a system. We want a way. We want our brain to have something that we do. We check off. I do this, this, and this, and this, and I've let go.
Right. And by holding on to that, it keeps you stuck.
So that doesn't compute. Because the question I get a lot is, but how do I let go? I know I need to let go.
It's so simple.
I know
it's
I have
hard.
these symptoms. I have these symptoms of sleep issues, mental health issues, issues with my relationships, issues that affect my spending or how I use my energy because I get in a tizzy with anxiety or whatever. I'm not present. I'm not letting go of something that my stress levels go up. I eat food. I binge eat. I smoke cigarettes. Whatever it is, that is your coping mechanism that keeps you from the present moment, that keeps you from having to look at that cassette tape on some level and be present with it and then say, oh, wait, pause. I want to take this out. We avoid that one breath, that one step before taking that tape out and pushing pause. And then we just keep on with these experiencing these symptoms. Another common symptom I've seen is when you get anxiety and you get overwhelmed and you're getting a buildup of all this stuff you need to let go of, instead of being still and allowing yourself to, we get hyper busy, we get busier, obsessively clean things, clear out clutter. There's almost like symbolic representations that we're trying to let go of stuff. We're going to get rid of all these things in our closet. These drawers are cluttered. We're going to get rid of it. Now, not that that's not a good physical representation of what you're trying to do in your mental body, to clear things, to declutter, to do spring cleaning, to clean your home. But if we are always doing that, we're always cleaning or decluttering or whatever, but not clearing out the mental body, you're going to consistently just build up this energetic feeling of pressure. And then only like, oh, okay, I cleaned the entire house. But is that really fixing what is underlyingly potentially pushing you to want to do that thing impulsively?
Well, I think a lot of it ties into the fact that we're never really taught how to deal with our mind. And the question is more about our action. Why did you do that? Why didn't you do that? Or didn't you hear this? Or, that it's more the critique of how we're interacting with our outer world, and the inner world is almost always left to the realm of spirituality, unless we have parents that are particularly inclined in the field of psychology or something like that, who have some experience with that type of work. Then you're going to find that we almost lose track of where our inner and outer worlds overlap. That we can certainly identify that these are my inner thoughts and these are my outer, what I show people or tell people. But very often we have a difficulty figuring out where the divider is between the inner and outer world. And so when we can find where that space is, it's not that it limits anything, but rather it helps us to identify what's going on inside of us and what's going on outside of us. And very often we find that the world outside of us is far less personal than we make it. That, it's one of the 4 agreements that it's so important for us to remember that this isn't about you. And that when we can let that go, this projection of ego onto our environment, it can change the way that we experience our life. And so, again, rather than holding on to this moment as if it's something that we have to carry along with us, for better, for worse, it's the opportunity for us to say, yes, this happened. We can acknowledge it. We can appreciate it. Or we can say, you know what, I'm going to learn from this because I don't want to be here again. But the crucial component is to then let it go, to take the lesson and release the moment, because the lesson stays with you in every moment. But if you continually focus on the minutia, the details of the situation, you're going to get stuck in the past, and that's how you end up perpetuating the past by projecting it onto the present.
It's a mental loop. It's that tape, that CD, that file playing over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And sometimes we get on that mental hamster where we're trying to figure out how to solve it. We're trying to think our way out of it. And, I think that's where people get stuck. Mm-hmm. And in all things too, where sometimes they're working with physical pain and trying everything they can do, seeing doctors, chiropractors, body workers to work with something, diet, nutrition, whatever. They're trying all those things to get rid of the physical pain, mm-hmm. but they're not looking at the mental body.
Sure.
Sometimes the letting go is a mental process. Sometimes the letting go is a physical process. If you've been stuck in the mental, then you're going to have a hard time letting go. So I always suggest, if you're like, I keep getting stuck, I have a hard time letting go, I don't know how to let go, mm-hmm. what do I do? Then look at these different areas: the physical body, the mind, and the spirit. The physical body is, have you been focusing in your mind all this time with trying to figure out what the steps are to let go, or journaling your way out of it, or talk therapy for years or whatever? Mental, but you haven't been incorporating the body in some way. Physical body work really helps release that. Yoga helps release that. Acupuncture, there's the mind-body connection is so important. Reading The Body Keeps Score is a really good book to further understand more of that. We'll talk more of that. If you have not already learned about that on this podcast, I suggest listening to previous episodes, but that's kind of a big piece I think people miss. And then the spiritual aspect is, if you have taken care of your body and you've taken care of your mind, and there's still this level of trust, does the universe, does God, you may not believe in a higher power, but is life set up in a way that it will naturally take me down where I need to be downstream? Or do I have to continue to own this and do these things myself? I'm in charge. Mm-hmm. So that's where I think the spirit is. If you've taken care of the mind and the body and you're still like, I can't let go, where is the spiritual part of you? What does that look like that will help you feel a sense of trust, mm-hmm. a sense of you can sigh and you can let go, that there is something bigger than you that is holding you, that is guiding you.
Yeah, and even if you don't have something there in that capacity, understanding that your limitation of only being in this moment precludes you from being able to affect the future or the past anyway, aside from in this moment. So even if you don't want to say it's in God's hands or the universe has got my back, you can say there's no point in me worrying about it anyway because I can't do anything until it gets here. So I might as well be here and be ready for it. Yeah. So sometimes it's about letting go in that way.
Yeah. Well, the reason why we did this podcast episode, not only is it because it's been asked for, but if you look at the world around you and look at the pressure that is building up, that has been building up, that continues to build up, that our society is in, compare that to you walking in a forest where everything just is. The trees aren't holding their breath. The animals aren't, this is happening, and getting stuck in something, getting stuck in whatever nature, what it is not letting go of. Nature naturally grows and then lets go and dies in the fall. It has cycles. It has a natural progression, ebbs and flows, and it just goes with it. It doesn't hold on to things. So if you just look at the contrast between our collective society right now and that as an example of what letting go could, in essence, look like and feel like in a representation.
Yeah.
We wanted to talk about this because if you are in an area in your job, in your family, in watching politics, watching news, watching whatever, that has this sense of heightened nervousness, this tension, that's a good cue for you to always then recognize in those spaces, there's not letting go. In some capacity, this group, this workplace, this whatever, this high tension or stress is just an example of a group of people not letting go of something.
Sure.
Collectively. Because you may have one person at work that's causing the problems and everyone's getting mad at them, and they're, whoever started it, threw the stone in the pond, the ripples are going out, and other people are now getting rocked by the ripples in their little rowboats and going, what is happening? Mm-hmm. And instead of going with it, they're, are letting go, having forgiveness, compassion, having conversations, setting boundaries, whatever needs to happen in those circumstances, we don't let go. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's a kind of a nice check-in and inventory for yourself to how do you know if you're not letting go, to check in with your body, check in with how tight it feels versus how relaxed it feels and open, check in with your emotions, how tight and rigid they may feel versus how open and flowing they may feel, even if it is a matter of you're going through grief, you're going through sadness, you're going through some of these emotions that we as humans say you shouldn't be feeling. Well, as long as you're there with them and you're present with them, they will flow through. They will be that wave that will come through and pass. But holding on to it and trying to push the wave away or make it not happen, that not letting go will continue to create more suffering and pain. So just thinking of this idea of rigidness and tightness around your environment, your mind, your thoughts, your emotions, and just to give yourself an inventory, a check-in, like, where am I not letting go here? And I think that's really important because the world, on some big capacity, we've had this huge event in 2020 that hit us so big that now all these ripples have come to the surface of all the things that we are maybe unhappy with, maybe that need to change in the world, that maybe need to shift. And we're working on shifting it in ourselves and in the collective, but along the way, in order to move into something new and to birth into a new world, a new life within ourselves or the collective globe, we need to let go. We need to let go of our old stories of ourselves. We need to let go of our old stories about other people, of other countries, of other religions, we need to let go of all these things. And in order to do that, we need to first recognize when we're not letting go.
And it's important for us to remember that that process happens now. It's not a trek for you to go on, to go diving into the depths of your mind and your memory to try and find the places that you need to let things go,
yes,
but rather to be present as the past comes up and let it go.
That's the call out on me. So not that you did that consciously. I don't think you did that consciously, but it's actually for a lot of other people too, I'm sure. That's been my pattern.
Yeah.
I love self-development. I love personal development. So sometimes part of my journey is, let's turn over another rock. What more is there to release, to let go of? I'm so excited when I find a new thing, because then when I let go of it, there's more freedom, there's more joy, there's more happiness in my life, more abundance. And so I love that. And so part of my journey's been going and like seeking it out instead of allowing it to come, because that's not letting go and letting the process. And you're absolutely right, because I know some of you out there are really passionate about self-development as well.
And sometimes we get excited about a particular revelation or something, an epiphany that we have, and we try to apply it to other places. I remember once I was doing a repair on some brick, and so I had a whole bag of mortar mixed up, but I only needed maybe about 4 or 5 inches worth of mortar. And so I carried this bucket of mortar all over the place trying to find something that I could repair with this mortar. And I spent all this time that I could have more effectively used to repair other things by trying to figure out where I was going to put this mortar, because I was so excited that I had this thing that I'm not using all the time. So sometimes we get wrapped up in the idea of like, oh, I have this new technique or tool and I want to try and find some place to apply it, rather than being where we are and utilizing that moment to its fullest.
Being where we are is fully accepting who we are in this present moment, who we are as an ego, as an identity, as a person, our good, bad, indifferent, all those things, the things that we still judge as good or bad, I should say, but full acceptance and neutral space that we are exactly where we need to be. And the judgment of that is just a human ego personified judgment. And I think if you aren't careful, the desire to go hunt more and do more is potentially a perfectionist, overachiever pattern. Did you listen to the Perfectionist podcast? If you haven't, checked that out. But it is something that is not just part of my journey, like to be aware and keep that in check. Because I love personal development. There's nothing more in my life that makes me feel more joy. But I have to be careful of continuing to be aware that where I'm at is exactly where I'm at. And that's perfect. And that's actually a more embodied expression of love, of true acceptance. Like, yeah, I still got to work on that. That's cool too. But I love where I'm at right now. And so kind of going forward here, I want to share, if you know, I can go first if you don't have any examples right off the bat, but some of the things that have worked for us along our journey, resources, books, anything we can put in the show notes, YouTube channels, anything that'll help with the process of letting go.
Well, of course, my default answer is always The Power of Now. That book changed my life and continues to. I've read it over and over again, and it's really, it continues to remind me to practice. And I think that is such an important thing for us, especially for those of us who would be listening to this, who are interested in that self-development and trying to reach a more centered space, that it's not about achieving it. It's the idea of practice, that every moment is going to bring you something new, and that means there's no way for you to prepare for it. That all you can do is accept the moment as it is, in the perfection that it brings, and then utilize the tools at your disposal to move forward. That's the only option that you really have. Aside from that, you're floundering. You're using your energy unnecessarily and trying to control things that are out of your control. The past is your memory. The future is your imagination. This is the only moment that is truly real. And that's something that The Power of Now continually reminds me in so many different words.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we get excited about the tricks and the tips and the hacks that have worked for us in letting go in the past. We're like, well, that worked last time. I did this breathing exercise or this meditation. And then maybe you listen to that meditation like hundreds of times and you're like, I don't know, this is getting a little stale. And then you get, like worked up, like, oh, I don't know, I got to let go of this, and this thing worked, and now it doesn't work now.
Sure.
And things have to change. Even your methods for letting go will change and evolve.
Until exactly. And I think it's a process of peeling an onion, that you continue to strip away these outer layers, these facades of the ritual that we go through to accomplish the goals. So, maybe at first we say a prayer and we give it to God, and so we feel that it's in God's hands now, and so there's no reason for me to worry. And that's just another language for saying letting go.
Yeah.
Maybe we light a candle and we know that this prayer candle that we've lit is going to, gain favor to make that happen. Maybe we've done a particular offering to a deity, or we've set up a vision board, or all of these things. It's the same process underneath. It's just that we're dressing it up with different costumes, so to speak.
Absolutely.
And so as we go forward and develop, very often these old languages become jaded because they become our native tongue. And so the magic that's around them, the trust, the inner component, which we very often forget, especially in the West, that this inner component is far more important than what we're doing externally. You don't have to go to a church to pray, and you certainly don't have to fly to an exotic location to change your life. You don't have to attend a seminar and get all this training. You can simply be and just let go. But it's hard to ride a bike without training wheels first. So sometimes we need that structure. We need the bumpers up on our bowling lane so that we can learn how to get that ball down the aisle.
Yeah. Yeah, I love your metaphors.
They're
so good. So are there any other things other than The Power of Now that you feel are very practical tools or things that that have helped you along the way that you would give as resources?
Well, I'm no different. I've utilized a lot of different things over the course of my life that have helped me to learn how to let go. But I think the most valuable thing that I learned, and I heard from Joseph Campbell, was that very seldom does enlightenment come as the result of having it all. Even in the story of the Buddha, who was a prince, someone who is lavishly wealthy, still feeling discontent, still feeling like something's missing. And, there was, ironically, when I was a child, I was one of the first productions I ever took part in was being the prince and the pauper in The Prince and the Pauper. And so that story really personifies the idea of it's all a matter of where you're at, and the grass seeming to be greener on the other side. But as we work with what we have, we can understand that even when things are getting more and more challenging, that's simply life showing us that the old way is working less and less and less. And so sometimes at those moments when it seems like everything is wrong, everything is broken, and we reach a point of borderline nihilism where we feel that nothing matters, all of a sudden, when nothing matters, we can let anything go. And we can feel that sense of peace and stillness because we're no longer holding on to anything. Before, we were convinced that it was part of our identity, or we wouldn't have an identity if we let go of it. Again, it's all of these stories that our mind tells us. And the more that we can understand that we can be the conscious observer of our thoughts, that we can watch our mind tell these stories without believing them, that's when we can start to change our interaction with life and see it less as an obstacle and more as an opportunity.
Yeah. As I'm thinking about all the things that I've done over my journey and giving some practical advice, I'm realizing that every single thing that I have done in my life, whether I was aware of it or not, was underlyingly the motivation for it was on some level to help me learn to let go.
Right. Exactly.
And it's like when you come to that realization, it's a really interesting conscious awareness now that everything I do is, there's some desire to let go. Because my value at this time is, my highest value is freedom. Mm-hmm. And until you have that value, that thing you value the most is your freedom, and emotionally, energetically, whatever, spiritually, you realize then at that time in your life that in order to have freedom, you have to let go. Mm-hmm. So along my journey, some of the practical things I did were affirmations. How do I let go of a mindset? Affirmations. How do I let go of an old story? Well, creating a new story. Let's journal up and say, what do I want to have in my life? How do I want to live? What do I want my life to look like? Making vision boards, creating something new. To let go of the old. So that's a nice tactic sometimes you can't let go of the past until you have an idea of what you want or desire for the future could look like, and give yourself some sense of hope that it could be different, and some sense of empowerment that it can be different. So that's a really great way of letting go. Along that journey, then sometimes you go, well, in order to move into this new story, I have to do these things. I have to let go of an old lifestyle. I have to let go of certain people. I have to let go of certain foods, certain bedtimes, or not having bedtimes at a certain, my sleep hygiene was off, so I'm not getting up on time to do these things to reach my goals, or whatever that new story is that you want to move on to. Sometimes it's changing your look. Sometimes it's changing your decor. Sometimes it's learning something new through letting go. So part of my journey has been continuing to educate myself and learn. Because the more I learn, the more I can let go of ignorance, let go of judgment, let go of things that I wasn't compassionate about before because I had less awareness of why things are that way. Why do they do that? That's why I love education and awareness, because the more you're aware of, the more you're like, oh, I have so much compassion for them. Of course, they're doing the best they can from what I've understood now and what I know now. Mm-hmm. This education, this awareness has allowed me to let go. Mm-hmm. The freedom of education, why I do this podcast, why we do this. I feel so passionate about it because it's helping you on some level mentally let go. Mm-hmm. The more you know.
Sure.
So along that journey, you bring into this intellectual world of wanting, that's my practical steps for letting go along my journey. And then I've been working with my body because letting go is also allowing the nervous system to heal through trauma, through stress, through the things that you've tried to think your way out of and you haven't been able to with affirmations or vision boards or magic spells or journeying or whatever, Reiki a million times, body work, whatever. How do I then address my body, your body? What does your nervous system need to heal? Sometimes people's nervous system may need stimulation. Maybe they've been depressed and sitting and stagnant and in not moving. And so in that case, movement is very healthy to move through and letting go of the stagnancy. Because sometimes you need to let go of stillness, of not moving and staying stationary. Sometimes you've had too much movement and too much stress on your nervous system. And all the amazing holistic tools we talk about on this podcast, food, meditation, all the body work, all the things, help the nervous system to relax and unwind. And my favorite thing now still is the crystal mat and the sauna. I love those things. Those are my current flavors of the day that I love to help my nervous system unwind, and Kundalini yoga.
There you go.
I love it. So those are things that help your nervous system. So when you've addressed the practical steps, affirmations and new stories, and now I have to make these steps to make these new stories happen, and now I have to address the body, set boundaries down with certain people and myself, and get certain people out of my life. Again, all these ways you're letting go of an old life. And what are the next stages? I think in general, an interesting stage along my journey in letting go is actually letting go of the story of what I want to create.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a very ambitious person, and what's been really interesting, kind of a universal curveball for my journey has been the cosmic astrological one. So we got, for those of you who don't speak astrologies, Matt's an astrologer here, so I'll share, over the last year I've been going through something called a Pluto-Moon conjunction. So Pluto conjunct my natal moon.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes in life, whether we say that maybe this is what happened to Eckhart Tolle, maybe something like that, where he had an enlightening, awakening experience. He had a wake-up call. You have a near-death experience. You have these cosmic interventions throughout your life that you could be doing all the things to let go consciously,
Sure.
body, mind, spirit. But sometimes divine grace comes right on in there and says, you're really having a hard time letting go. This is your time in your life that we're just going to schedule this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to happen whether you're holding on for dear life. The harder you hold on, the more painful it's going to be.
Right.
And that's what that Pluto-Moon conjunction has been for me. And it's been really interesting to see the old story, the old Kara, the old identity of who I believe myself to be and what I wanted for my future. And this is I'm very good at manifesting, very good at creating a journey, and also listening to spirit, like what's the best for me, what's the highest good, all that. Now it's shifted to what's the highest good for humanity? What can I do to be of service the most?
Mm-hmm.
And it almost is a letting go process in a much deeper way, because my journey, what I want to do, it's letting go of that. And actually, it's interesting to watch it unfold, because a lot of things that I thought I wanted, and this may go for you too, you may have experienced this or may be experiencing this currently, the things you think you wanted, when you finally let go of them and allow space for something maybe more authentic or more present, that's full of life and vitality to show up, you realize that's not actually what you really wanted.
The chase is better than the catch sometimes, and it's not so much the achievement that we're after, but rather the pursuit of it. And a lot of times for people who are in this world of self-help, it's that way.
Yeah,
and
I'm always looking for the next best thing,
right.
The next thing to get myself better, instead of being, I'm enough.
Right.
I'm enough.
Right.
I'm enough.
Yeah, as we go through this path, you can tell its effectiveness by having less and less rather than more and more.
Yeah. Yeah. So the more that people are hoarding or wanting more success, or wanting to help more people, or wanting to have a bigger home, or whatever it is, more. It's definitely from my experience now currently, a gauge for they're not letting go, because there's divine behind it all that you will have, and you do have everything you need.
we get preoccupied with the idea of there being a right path, and we've got to find what the right path is.
What's my life purpose?
When
your life purpose is now.
Your life purpose is to be here, and that's why you're already doing it. You're just distracting yourself with a story.
Yeah.
And so accepting where you are will help you understand you are on your right path, and the only way you'll end up on the wrong path is if you're not present while it's happening.
And if you're an overachiever and you are on a journey that you're always looking for the next thing to improve, and this triggers you, time to take a look. Take a look.
Or not.
Because it doesn't mean that, or not.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean,
it's not going to change.
It doesn't mean that I have this awareness now that I'm not like, I'm still going to climb the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not doing it as vigorously with so much attachment that if I don't do it, that means I am not successful or I am nothing or whatever it is. It's a lot nicer. It's like, let's go up the mountain instead of grueling and
it's
hold
tough
all
to
these
reach the peak when you're
baggage and
holding on to all this stuff.
Yeah, it's so much more of a fun journey, I find. And maybe I'm not going up to the top. Maybe I'm sliding down, and that's a fun ride too.
Right. You're exploring the mountain rather than trying to just reach the peak.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much more to see around the mountain instead of only one final destination. Because then when you get there, what's next? Oh, that was a disappointment. It got to the top. What now?
Yeah, it's just like astronauts training in a giant pool. It's that, they get into space, and if they are saying, hey, where's all the water? It's just because you are practicing something over and over again doesn't mean that it's going to be the same, but you can still transfer the skills. And again, the only way that you'd be able to learn something from the experience rather than trying to anticipate the outcome is by being present with it. That's when you can learn the lessons that are being taught to you. You can have the expanded awareness and experience.
Now, if you're stuck in the mental body and you do, and nothing wrong with that, please be aware, don't judge that. If you're in that space and you feel like, I'm just trying to figure out how to let go, one of the things that really worked for me along that journey, and then of course after a while it doesn't work, but it does work until you get tired of it and you're like, I need something new. You use these tools until they no longer work because you grow out of them. You use them and they work, and now it's time for the next thing, right? The thing that worked was, how do I let go when my brain just keeps wanting to go, 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 go? It's a really good moment to take a deep breath in and then just exhale and like relax your body like a rag doll. Because I've seen, and I've done this myself, where I'm like frustrated. I'm like, I'm telling my brain, just let go of this, just let go of this. Why won't it let go of it? And then you get more upset about it not letting go. You're heightening your nervous system even more, putting your brain waves in this hyper arousal state. What it's doing is trying to survive and trying to figure out and problem solve, and going to hyper fixate more on that problem, on that mental thought. So a way to kind of stop that in its tracks, pause on that mental loop CD, whatever we said earlier with the file in the brain, right? To stop it is to relax the body. Take a deep breath in, exhale, and then just ragdoll. Just feel your body relax. And if your brain keeps going, that's fine. Just focus on your body and focus on all the muscles you can relax even further. Right. Because then it appeases the mental aspect of you that wants to do something. I want to do something active. What steps can I take to do something that I feel that I'm actually doing something? Because there's an anxiousness, like, well, if I can't do anything about it, I feel even more anxious about not being able to let go. So physically relax your body, get like a rag doll, let go. And then I definitely suggest movement practices, Qigong, Kundalini yoga practices, things that you are actively moving, walking, even walking meditation, mindful walking throughout your day, where you're moving the body, moving through the mental body by bringing yourself aware back to the physical. And movement in a way that's not high endurance, high stress, because that puts stress on the nervous system and can sometimes make you go more. But some people, it does work for them that sometimes they have such a hard time letting go that it's not till they work themselves out, like an hour-long, grueling, high-intensity workout, that they can finally let go. That's why most of our culture, we've been so on high alert that power yoga does it for most people. They have to go to a very intense yoga class to be able to lay in Shavasana and lay down there and relax, actually, and let their mind shut up. But that's a symptom of a very high intense nervous system. The nervous system's been just wired that way. But if you've been burned out, what most of us are, now our nervous system can't take it much anymore. Adrenal fatigue is too much. More of a slow, gentle movement for you. And you have to figure out what works for you. One may be intense workout one day and then walking in gentle movement the other day. But I think those are really practical things that you can do. One other book, The Power of Now, we recommend that. We'll put that in the show notes. If you have not read that, it's like a staple. Yes. And we'll put some of your favorite Eckhart Tolle YouTube videos in there too. We'll share some YouTube videos for him. But another one is Dr. David Hawkins. Not Stephen Hawkins. Yes. Dr. David Hawkins. He's written many books. The most popular one is Power versus Force. It's a very common one that people may have heard of. But he has a book called Letting Go, which is called Letting Go. And I love that for the mental body that gets stuck in the stages of letting go. How do I know where I'm at in letting go? I want to know where I'm at on the journey so I can know where the destination is, because I want to be there. Instead of being, can you let go of like the final? No, I'm used to the finish line. I need to have a finish line to know. Well, that's a really good one, because he breaks down, and in most of his books as well, he talks about the different levels of consciousness and the emotions that are related to them. That the lowest form is like apathy and grief, and then up to the highest stage of joy and love. And he labels them in different numbers. And so that can sometimes help your brain not just know where you're at along the journey to how far you have to go yet to let go, but also know, engage yourself in any particular moment, like, because you will be letting go for the rest of your life. Change will happen. You will still go through periods of grief and sadness and anger and joy and all these things. Even if you're working on being present, you still may come up in the present moment. So it can give you a gauge of where you're at in that final sigh of letting go. You can gauge yourself. So, how do you feel about this podcast episode? Unscripted, everyone. I hope you're loving it. I think that our time is done here. Do you have anything else that you want to say? It feels complete to me.
I think it's just being gentle, being open, accepting, and understanding that this moment wants to meet you so bad. And all you have to do is put your arms out and embrace it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you guys so much for listening. Again, if you have any questions for us, we love answering questions on the podcast. We could do a whole podcast episode on some of the specific questions you may have to ask too. So please send them in. If you have any particular topics you want us to talk about, also send those in. There is a link, a form in the show notes that you can ask us a question. You can fill it out there. But other than that, thank you guys so much for listening. We're hoping that you have a very present, mindful journey along your letting go process and find the freedom and release from suffering that not letting go has maybe had in your life. So thank you again, my friends, and be well until next time. Thank you for listening to the Mind Body Detox podcast. We wish you wellness and health in your mind, body, and spirit. And be well until next time, my friends.